This is Tuesday, May 31st. There are 49 days until San Diego Comic-Con 2022. Welcome to SDConCast, the official podcast of the San Diego Comic-Con unofficial blog.
VANUHTEE go.
Oh my god, I love LiveJournal and my LiveJournal loves me. Current mood is hyperactive on current music, Refuse 73. I love the color scheme, it's pink and purple, it looks green.
Welcome to week 4 of the podcast, and all I want in life is carpeting at a convention. We'll take your comments and questions during the show. You can tweet us at SD_comic_con or use the hashtag SDConCast. We'll also be keeping an eye on the YouTube live chat if you wish to comment there. Joining me on the podcast tonight, as always, Carrie Dixon.
Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us.
And joining us also is Kim Twombly of Outside Comic-Con.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me.
And our special guest is Steve Coulson of Campfire.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
All right, so let's get started. First up, Carrie, why don't you kick it off?
Sure. So, Steve, first up, for anyone who isn't familiar, can you just tell us a little bit about Campfire?
Sure. Campfire is a marketing agency. We're based in New York City. And we have been going about 15, 16 years now. We create immersive participatory campaigns for both brands and for entertainment companies. And over the years, the kind of work we have done has changed with media as media change. So in the early days, we were very much focused on digital and social media. We did a little bit of metaverse work in the early days of Second Life. And then over time, our work changed to be more content driven, choose your own adventure movies and audio dramas, and then expanding into immersive activations and events. So Campfire continues to change. Our history, my partner in Campfire, a guy called Mike Manello, was one of the producers of the Blair Witch Project. And the Blair Witch Project is obviously very famous, not only for its place in cinema history, but also in the way it activated fans, not only through transmedia storytelling and expanding the universe beyond the screen, but also the way it built its community in advance of the movie and used that community to help propel the movie into theaters. Fans were calling up and saying, "I want to see the Blair Witch Project can you book it in a theater?" And that was part of its success. I think that was the root of Campfire. That we realized that could go beyond just that one movie, and we could offer that as a service to brands and to entertainment franchises. And then if you look at our website, campfirenyc.com, you'll see that over the years we've worked with many, a lot of television companies, a lot of the new streamers, games companies, but also products and brands, Lego, Sonos, car companies, liquor companies, etc.
So specifically at San Diego, you've done some several activations over the years, including Westworld, Purge City, Watchmen. What do you think makes a good offsite at San Diego?
Well, I think it's about what makes a good immersive experience, and I say immersive experience beyond just a physical in-person one, because a lot of our immersive experience in the past were based around digital moments, or digital plays, if you like. I think the interesting thing about San Diego Comic-Con, obviously, is its scale. It's enormous, and a lot of the briefs we've gotten over the years from clients have been talked about scale. How do we get 4,000 people? How do we get 5,000 people here in activation? And it's really difficult to give meaningful moments to 5,000 people when you push them through. So we really like to work with clients who look beyond that, clients that want to create a really special moment for fans, even if the number of fans that you put through isn't as high. A meaningful interactive moment, both to thank fan bases for if it's an existing show or an existing movie franchise, or to introduce new fans to a story world and make them take their first steps into it. So I always think it's interesting to do something of quality and authenticity at a venue that's really all about scale, the biggest. And it's enormous, and it's very overwhelming, isn't it, for anybody that's never been to San Diego Comic-Con? When you go, it's just sensory overload, always sensory overload. And I say that having created activations at South by Southwest and New York Comic-Con and TechCrunch Disrupt and a variety of other kind of venues. But San Diego Comic-Con is the Cecil B. DeMille version, right?
Right. There's nothing like it. So one of my favorite things about at least two of the offsites that you've done, both Westworld and Purge City had freaking amazing swag. And I was saying this before we went on. I keep like nothing. I'm terrible. I keep nothing that I get at Comic-Con, but I still have like my Purge City candle. I definitely still have my Westworld hat. Love these. How important do you think it is to give fans something tangible to remember the offsite?
A lot of the work that we've done over the years, even going back to True Blood and Game of Thrones, first two seasons of Game of Thrones, was about exploring all five senses: touch, taste, smell, and getting a physical object in an immersive experience. It's something kind of tangible, something you can touch, something you can smell, and that evokes a world, an imaginary world. It's a really powerful moment, especially in an increasingly digital age. So we always look at trying to create something physical for you to have, you to take, not necessarily swag, but props.
Yeah.
And we try to make them as rich and as meaningful as possible. You know, there's one of the stories that I tell about, there's a movie called Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve goes back in time and falls in love with Jane Seymour. And the way he travels back in time is by just him focusing. He focuses his attention on the past and he moves back in time. As long as he keeps his attention, he will stay in the past, and without giving away the plot. It's a great movie. He reaches into his pocket back in the 1800s or late 1800s, and he finds a modern penny. And finding that modern penny, that piece that piece that doesn't sit within the story world, brings him back to the present. Which means that when you are creating a piece of swag or something that is given away to as part of this immersive experience, the authenticity of that piece is really, really important. And you Kerry, you talked about the Purge City candle. Purge City, and we can talk about Purge City, was a party city for the Purge.
Yes, and it was phenomenal. Especially, I love the Purge, and I was just like, this is so cool.
So one of the things we created for the Purge were seed packets for the blue. I can't remember the name of the blue flowers that are really important in the Purge, and I think it's important when you go into an environment like that, is that if you could pick up a seed packet, you could turn it back in very fine print on the bottom of the seed packet. It told you about the best time to plant the seeds so they would be ready for Purge Day, and the kind of environments and temperature and that kind of detail. And that's the same thing that that if you think of the seed packet as the penny, it has to stay within the world and it has to be authentic to the material it's made of, to the, as you say, the Westworld hats and what they were made of, and were they of the quality that you would get if you went to Westworld. I think that's really important. So yeah, we take a lot of pride in creating our props and put on where they sit within the experience itself and what they're part of the experience. I mean, the Westworld hat was very much part of the narrative, right?
Yes,
Karen?
yes,
I mean,
it was.
You have a hat, so I'm sure you went through it, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the Westworld experience actually started with the premise. We've worked with HBO for many years, and we'd had a lot of conversations with the whole marketing team from very early on in Westworld, when it was sort of the script stage, about lots of activities that could happen. And as the pilot came through and we all saw it, there was a realization within the organization that moment of choice, when you become a good guy or a bad guy, when you have a white hat or a black hat. It was a really important moment in the show, and could we focus something around that? And so it started from the hats. The hats were the entryway into that immersive experience, which then kind of took on a life of its own.
I mean, I've been to a lot of offsites at Comic-Con, but honestly, that was probably my favorite one that I've ever been to, because I mean, it really did just pull you into the world. Like, for anybody who didn't go through it, they would ask you questions and then kind of give you an analysis about yourself. And every person I spoke to, myself included, was just like, this is so spot on that it's just crazy, but it was so good. Loved it.
So that was part of the experience, right? Part of the experience was you would have a one-on-one session with a psychological counselor. As I imagine, if you go to Westworld, they try to find out what your hopes and your desires are, so that they can give you the perfect experience at Westworld for your $500,000 or whatever it costs to go for a week. So we worked with a group of amazing actresses who had come from a variety of experiences. One originated a Pint and Sleep No More. So they were well versed in immersive dialogue and improvisation. But the other thing that's at the heart of an awful lot of work that Campfire does is magic and magicians. I worked my way through college as a magician. I love magic. Probably next to comic books, magic is one of my favorite things. So Campfire always tries to include a magical moment with anything it does, and I could spend 30 minutes talking about why that's important. There's a moment in a magic trick, even though you know it's not real.
Yeah.
You go and you watch it, there must be a technique, and you watch for the technique. But there's a moment when it first happens, when the man disappears or the rabbit appears or whatever it might be, where just for a fleeting moment, the Occam's razor of that is, oh, it's real. Magic's real, because that's the simplest explanation. And then you go, of course not. And you have to think that. But that moment where the hair stands up on the back of your neck is really important. And you get that in magical performance a lot. Campfire tries to bring that in. So that moment that you had with those psychologists was a magical moment. There was some psychology, and we worked with the psychologists before to use forest statements and use kind of like cold reading techniques. But there was a lot of there's a great English magician, Derren Brown. There's a lot of Derren Brown's thinking and his techniques in the Westworld experience that we taught to those actresses. So I think what you actually got was a little mind reading, one-on-one mind reading test. And obviously it worked, because they saw you were a good guy.
Yes.
Got a white hat. Story.
It was just phenomenal. But there was a slight flip side to that offsite. Kim, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, you already touched on it a little bit. The offsites, when they get extremely immersive, like yours are very limited. So I know, wasn't Westworld something like 100 people a day?
I think we got through about 500 people.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's decent, yeah.
How do you balance, attendance with that experience?
I mean, it all depends on the project and its objectives. One thing about Westworld was a really early experiment for HBO with immersive participatory experiences, and they've done a lot more since, but this was one of the first, so it was a test, if you like. We'd worked the year before on a similar project for them that was based around a VR game that was on the road, and it was taken to TechCrunch, taken to New York Comic Con, and Campfire developed a little piece of immersive theater around it that involved the hosts. And then when we looked down and talked about what to do following the first season, we said let's take that piece and expand that out. But there were some realities of where we could do it. We were quite late coming into that project, as I remember, so it was finding a space. It was quite a high cost for each individual person going through. These are these are Serratelli hats. I don't know for sure, but I seem to remember those were over $100 a hat, I believe, because they were made by one of the best Stetson makers in the world. Because Westworld is about quality. And the other thing, about Westworld is that not everybody goes to Westworld, right? There's only 10 people in the park at a time or whatever it is. So it's not Disneyland, it's something very, very different. So I think we all thought what we could actually do is use that exclusivity, use that elitism, almost that FOMO for people who couldn't get in to the benefit of what Westworld means and what the kind of environment it is.
And I
I
know
also think we wouldn't have been able to do the thing you had, that one-on-one, having that, all the things that I thought were really important were like the hats, which were beautiful, the one-on-one experience with the psychologist, and then going and having a little story told to you by one of the best bar teams in the world, and that was the team from Lost Lake, Paul McGee and Toby Allison, who brought a variety of world-class cocktails into the environment. I don't think we would have been able to scale that to 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people.
it would have been very hard.
So I can imagine it must have been frustrating for the people that couldn't get in.
It's okay, we got to live vicariously through Carrie, so it's fine. I got all the details.
Yes.
Yeah. We did that experience in San Diego Comic-Con, and then we did it again in New York Comic-Con in the following October with a few slight variations.
So you mentioned when that you came into the project a little late. What's the typical timeline of when you actually start talking to companies about these activations? Do they come to you with an idea, or just, hey, here's the show, make something?
Well, obviously it varies client by client. The answer is never soon enough. Clients never come soon enough. The most forward-thinking client we've ever worked with has probably been thinking about it in January. I seem to remember that the Westworld project, we started working on it in May.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that is pretty late. Yes.
So that is very late. So anywhere between those two, I think different activation, different production companies. I mean, Campfire is an agency rather than a production company. We work with production companies. I think for a client has a really strong idea of what they want already, they would go to a production company and go, this is one, can you build that for us? And there are some really great production companies that will do that, some official and non-official. Campfire has always been the kind of company that you come to where you have a business objective and you need a creative solution, and then it's our job to kind of find that creative solution. Campfire will rarely take on a project where the client says, this is what we want, because there's not really room for us to operate at that point. What we really want is a client to say, this is what we want to achieve. And that could be a metric, or it could be a qualitative reaction, fan reaction, press reaction. Usually, obviously, with San Diego Comic-Con, there's a connection between what's happening in panels and what's happening in offsites. Yeah. And that's usually where that kind of starts. Are we having a panel? What else is going on? Are there parties going on? What part of the ecosystem does the activation kind of take on as much bigger whole?
What's the most common objective that companies come to you for? Is it just getting through the noise of Comic-Con and being noticed?
Sure. I mean, the answer is yes. I have seen many briefs that say our objective is to win San Diego. Whatever that means, because it's always race to the top. Yes, it's press. There are a couple of things I would say. One is definitely service for existing fans. It's a connecting point between creators and their fans, and that's not just marketing companies and production companies. That's showrunners and the initial creators. We had Jason Bloom from Blumhouse come through Purge City and loved every moment of that, and the press came along and interviewed him within the environment of Purge City, and that gave him a platform to talk a little bit more about the show. So it's all of those. Press is really important. On every project we do, we usually have a press night the night before. I think we did that with Westworld, and we did that with Purge City. The press came through the night before, and then that gives them the opportunity to talk about it, to post about it, and to excite the fans, who hopefully will wait in line the next day to get in.
Well, it's my turn. I wanted to ask, what are some things that you think the average attendee probably doesn't know about what goes into these events that you create?
That's a good question. You know, one of the interesting and most difficult equations is always around, usually start with the spreadsheet that talks about, well, how many people can we put through an hour? What's the size of the venue? If I put 100 people through this an hour, how long an experience can each of those fans have that's meaningful? If we're having swag, what does that do to our numbers? And there's quite a complicated calculation at the very front that balances the time you're going to be open, in the staff you need to be open for that amount of time, the people you can put through in that amount of time, and they can have a great experience, where the line is going to be and how many people can comfortably fit in line. Well, if I'm having an experience that's 5,000 people going through the activation over the course of so many days, how long on average will somebody have to wait in line? And then what do you do for those people in line? Because the worst thing is waiting in line for something and then getting in and going, I gave up 2 hours of my life for this. This is not worth the wait. So there's a lot of kind of logistical thinking before you even get to kind of the creative concept that sets you some parameters that says, oh, this is a 30-minute experience. This is a 15-minute experience. 15-minute experience where there'll be another 50 people in the room or another 500 people in the space. And that starts to guide kind of the brief for what the creative solution is.
Are there any activations you know of that like didn't happen, but that would have been cool? Can you share any of that if you do know? And you're allowed to say no.
I'm not hedging the bets. You know, we Campfire had 2 big activations actually at South by Southwest that was cancelled with 48 hours. One of them was going to be the most amazing thing I think we'd ever done. It was going to be for a show that was truly magical experience, and we built so many things, and that was cancelled in 48 hours because of COVID. So, and that was really the last big event that we kind of activated against up to date.
Yeah.
So I know that, and I know there were quite a lot of things happening at South by Southwest that year that were all cancelled with 48 hours to go.
So what happens at that point? Like, does all that like go into storage? Does it?
Well, in our case, it all went into storage, but then the world moved on. And 2 years later, that was for a show, and the show came out, and the show did well, and then the second season came out, and by the time you got to the third season, it wasn't as relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, it was never to be seen. But it was going to be cool.
That's a
but that hasn't happened to us so far with San Diego Comic-Con so far.
Well, that's good. So speaking of all of the offsites, not just Comic-Con, although if you want to pick a Comic-Con one as well, do you have a personal favorite of all the ones you've been involved in?
I mean, I think the ones you've mentioned, we really enjoyed. We have done others as well. We've done others that stood alone. We took over a street in Los Angeles and turned it into 1970s New York for the week. We had actors, and we had if you walked anywhere up and down that street, it felt like you were back in 1970s Times Square. And that was for Amazon Prime Video, for Hunters. we've worked with Amazon on a few projects as well. But no, I think as I said to you, Kerry, I think the Westworld experience was one of the first times that we really had this really visceral connection to our audience, the fans that were waiting in line to get into that thing. We really wanted to give them something special. And hearing from you that was a special occasion for you, that's really important, because then that goes beyond just doing a series of Instagram points.
Absolutely.
Or, it's an exhibition. It's a fancy exhibition. We really wanted to create a piece of theatre that moved people. And the fact that you have that feeling now. And the same with Purge City. The Purge City was my favorite pitch. USA came to us and said, look, we have this really difficult show. And that's the Purge is a very dark show, right? It's a great movie.
It is, but yeah.
It's a great story. Often people come to Campfire and go, we've got this story world. It's an amazing story world, but it's a world where the Nazis won the war. Or it's a world where all crime is legal for a day. And we can't get, in a marketing environment, we can't get too serious. So how do you put some hope into a world that's lost all hope? How, for the Purge, do you create something that's somewhat family friendly? And our solution was that in a world where the Purge, in America, where the Purge is legal one day a year, it would become a national holiday, and some terrible retailers would create Pie City for the Purge.
Absolutely.
I was reminded of it recently when I saw that. I think it was it Walmart were bringing out ice cream for Juneteenth.
Oh yeah.
Went, that's a really bad idea. So that's what Purge City was, and the client had asked us just for something that celebrated the day but didn't glorify murder. It actually glorified keeping yourself safe on Purge Day, where you could go, or how you could keep yourself on Purge. And I think we won that pitch on a single visual, which was the front of the Purge City store. We took a party city and we changed it to Purge City, and that's
it was
Purge City.
genius.
Your one-stop shop for the perfect Purge night. And I think when a client sees that kind of idea that's kind of simple, they go, oh, I can see where my social team can contribute to that idea. I can see where my digital team can work with that. I can see where lots of different parts of their ecosystem can contribute to this. So it's not just an idea that Campfire are creating. Everybody kind of gets it on the fun. So that was a fun one.
It was a fun one. And like you said, I mean, one of the problems that I have with a lot of offsites is kind of like you were mentioning. I mean, they're just sort of photo ops. They're glorified photo ops. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I love about what you've brought is they are, as you said, just so immersive. Like you go and it's just, you're in that world. Like it was so fun just going into Purge City and all the employees being like, how are you celebrating the Purge this year? Like it was just awesome.
Right. And we work with various groups of actors, immersive actors. Either we cast them ourselves. We've worked with Meta for You, who I know do a lot of these projects and are fabulous to work with, fantastic group of actors. And also, I think over the years ago, I know we were talking about it before we got on air, and we said, well, when were the first immersive kind of things at San Diego Comic-Con? And they kind of grew, and there was no like a one-time thing.
Yeah,
I do remember that year we did Westworld, and Giant Spoon did the amazing Blade Runner thing. To me, it felt like a bit of a turning point, because that was, to me, it felt like, oh, we've really got something going here, which is carried on in following years. And we did The Purge, and Amazon did Carnival Row, and those things have kind of increased, and hopefully we'll see some amazing things this year. It would have been even bigger if we had not been put on pause for 2 years, right?
That's right.
How are you guys feeling about coming back after 2 years away?
We're excited. I mean, I think I'm speaking for all of us, but I think we are all very excited to get back, and we're hoping, I mean, I'm curious to see if things are maybe a little bit scaled down, but I'm hoping that it's mostly back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even go to a ton of conventions every year, and I've already been to 3 in the last 6 months. So I just did Star Wars Celebration just this weekend. So I'm back at it, going to cons.
One of the things that I'm going to be careful because I don't really want to talk about this year. One of the things that we have found is over the course of the last 2 years is that not only has the world changed, but everybody has changed what they do, and what they believe, and what's important to them. I don't think we have any clients now that we were working with 2 years ago. I think they've all moved, or they've changed. They've moved on to other opportunities. So I suspect a lot of the people who are going to San Diego Comic-Con this year and in charge of those within marketing departments, it might be their first San Diego Comic-Con.
Which honestly is exciting. We love when there is new blood at Comic-Con. Like, that is our favorite thing. Like, don't get us wrong. We love seeing the same shows there every year, but sometimes you just want something a little bit different, a little bit new.
Right. I think you'll see some different things this year. I'm hoping we see different things this year from new thinking, new ways of approaching things.
Good. That is fantastic news. Kim?
Well, I just want to say we got a little bit of taste of that at Comic-Con Special Edition back in November, which just had a few offsites, but there was some new things already. So, I think in the chat seems very excited for what's coming up this year.
Yes.
Looking back, Steve, have you visited other companies' offsites over the years, and any others that stand out other than what you've talked about already? Any favorites that you can say?
Look, there are certain companies who I admire who do an amazing work in the space, and they always do interesting. I mentioned Giant Spoon. I think they do some fantastic work. I'm always interested to see their work, and I hope. I have no idea if they're doing something at San Diego Comic-Con, but they probably should be. And if they are, it's probably going to be great, whatever it is.
Yes, it's always good.
The interesting thing, I think that's also happened over the last few years, is that what was a promotional concept for a con has become something that people buy tickets. People go. I can go and see the Strange Things Experience here in Brooklyn at the moment, and I've seen a lot more of that over the last 4-5 years, obviously, of the very high quality productions that you go and you buy a ticket for, you go to, and you get an amazing experience. The Strange Things Experience is a pretty good example of that, I think. I think that's exciting as well, because it would be great actually to launch something at San Diego Comic-Con and then leave it in place for a month or 2 months, right, to keep going. I'm not sure if San Diego town can support that. Maybe that's why these things happen in LA and New York a little bit more often, because they have the audience. But I think it'd be really, it seems a shame to spend so much money for 4 days and then it to be put in storage. I think there's a world where that could, maybe San Diego Comic-Con could maybe be the first stop in, a nationwide tour.
Oh, Carrie, I think you're muted. Or I'm not here.
We can't hear Carrie.
We can't hear Carrie.
Oh no. I'll ask the question that she probably was going to ask while she figures it out.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear it.
Okay.
There you go.
No, sorry. I was going to ask, we talked about this a little bit before off the air, but I just wanted to ask, as you said, you've done like South by Southwest and New York and all these other places. What do you think makes San Diego different or special?
Well, New York Comic Con is very much people that have come in for the day on the subway. There's people from New York, there's people from Connecticut, there's people from, it doesn't feel quite as an oasis in the desert the San Diego Comic Con does.
The
South by
campus,
Southwest
yeah.
obviously feels that more so. I do get, I don't know do you know what percentage of out of towners it is? I mean, I know there's a lot of people coming from LA, but as people there, the town is given over specifically to that, and that's not the same for me. It is the same for South by Southwest, but not in a little bit of a different environment, because in terms of activations, because obviously there's a lot of serious panels going on at South by Southwest. But that idea of it's very interesting that San Diego Comic-Con feels like the oasis in the desert, but at the same time, it feels like you need to provide an oasis in the desert of San Diego Comic-Con. We talked to a lot of our clients, like San Diego Comic-Con is just this wall of noise and sound, and is there a place for you to create a moment where you can of respite from that, a moment where you can forget about the town around you and step into something that's a little bit more introspective. So that's a really nice double layer of people coming into this oasis that's also a desert and it's sweltering, and then can you then take them a little bit further down into the same thing when you go into a movie house, right? And the lights go down, you forget when you come out at the end and it's the blinding light again, you go, oh, I forgot it was the middle of summer, I'm here in the movie house. So that there's a nice little bit of opportunity for that at San Diego to transport people away for a little bit, and then when they come back they realize how deeply they've been transported.
Absolutely. Well, did we have any other questions, guys?
Do you get to go to Comic-Con?
That's a good question. I have not been inside the convention center.
Really?
I have in New York. I started reading comics when I was 5, so I'm a huge comic nerd. I have 60 boxes of comics in the attic, and for a long time I was a convention sketch hound. So I would go, and I would not San Diego Comic-Con, I would go to Baltimore and Philadelphia and anywhere where I thought my favorite artists were going to be, and line up outside the door at 5 a.m. to try and get sketches. So I have been to most conventions around the country, but I have not been inside the convention center, San Diego Comic-Con.
Maybe it's awesome. You should go in sometime.
You should.
Usually, I mean, it's a bit like, when you go traveling and you go, well, I just went to Paris, and they go, oh, didn't you love Paris? Well, I never actually got to see Paris because I was working, in meetings all the time. Yeah. It's a little bit like that with San Diego Comic-Con. It's like from the time you get there and to the time you leave is the only time. It was very interesting. I'll tell you a moment with the Westworld experience. And here's a bit of a tip for anybody who's putting on an activation at San Diego Comic-Con. If you want to give away a piece of swag, give away a piece of swag that's this big. And the reason is, and we didn't really think about it at the time, is that even though we only gave away about 500, 600 hats, something like that, it was an item that nobody could fit in their suitcase. Nobody could put that hat in their suitcase. The only way to get that hat home was to wear it. And so when I went to the airport on the Monday, I think I went out throughout the Monday morning. Closed up Sunday night, and I went out the Monday morning, and the airport was filled with people with cowboy hats, both black and white, sitting at the bar, because that was the only way they could get them home. And that was a really special moment. So I always say, look, if you're going to give away something that's so big that nobody can pack it in their suitcase to get back, and that's how how people will see what they missed out on.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really fun. And before you go, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you and Campfire online?
All right. Yes, you can find us at campfiremyc.com. Interesting about all our work is that most of the work we have video recaps. We'll go through all the work we talked about today, so you can take a look at that. Always happy to talk to people. Are there any students out there that want us to talk to classes? My partners and I would love to. We'd love to talk in depth about what our passions are, what we believe in. So come along to campfiremyc.com and check us out.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve. And maybe we'll see you at Comic-Con sometime.
Maybe.
Maybe. All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Steve.
Bye-bye.
And
Well, that was fun.
I hope that we get to see something that they create at Comic-Con this year.
Me too. I would like to preface this by saying I truly know nothing. I
Yeah.
truly know nothing. But my fingers are securely crossed for Apple TV. Every time somebody's like, new stuff's coming, I'm like, let it be Apple TV. So please, that is what I want.
Just in my research today, I saw that they did a Ted Lasso one at some point.
I saw
didn't
that
even know
too.
about it.
I know. I'm telling you, come
and
on,
then
Apple
Rusty.
TV.
Come on, that would be fun. We are so lucky as Comic-Con attendees to have all these amazing offsites, even if they are exclusive and we can't get to them.
Yes.
There's so many options to get to. So, fingers crossed for this year. I can't wait to see what's coming.
Absolutely. Same. All right. Well, before we get into the news, James, we want to pick your brain a little bit about a little convention that you went to over the weekend called Star Wars Celebration.
Yes, let's talk about that. Let's try not to have it be James Complains for 10 minutes.
I mean, you guys obviously did not see our outline, but literally I think James has made a list of things that he wants to make sure he covers. So James, why don't you just tell us what you want to talk about?
Okay, first thing I want to say is Celebration has probably some of my favorite convention moments ever. And it's the only one I've been to, and I'm sure that past ones have had those moments. Unfortunately, those highs were balanced with equal lows. You couldn't go to that convention and not have a bad time and a great time. And the bad time was all, I would say 99% of it was due to organization, line management, etc. So line management was the worst. They did bad line management. We got a photo op with Ewan McGregor, and that felt like Beth said that she felt like she didn't even get to meet him. She's like, they could have put a Ewan body double in there and she would have never noticed because they rushed us through so fast. I mean, it was literally like by the time it was how big those photo op booths are. They're like little mini rooms. They're like a room basically.
Yeah.
We weren't even out of the photo op booth and they were already ready to take the next person's picture. I mean, they were just cranking people through. So you basically got to get in, stand there, take a picture, get out. I mean, that's all you could do. We barely had time to say hello to him. And so that was an issue. There was no carpeting, of course, which I guess nobody's getting any carpeting. And we really hope that is not a trend that continues.
I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We have heard that there will not be carpeting on the aisles at San Diego Comic-Con. So,
Yeah. So
cool.
Boo. And when you're standing in one place for a few hours, it's horrible.
Yeah.
They do a lottery. So a lot of people have been talking about, will Comic-Con do a lottery for panels? And that's what Celebration does. They do what they essentially do is they run one big panel in the morning on the big stage, and then they live stream it to the two other biggest stages, and you can win entrance to those panels. Unfortunately, the way they do it is it's completely 100% random. So we got one panel, and I heard of other people getting every panel and other people getting no panels. And in my opinion, if they wanted to make it fair, you would have this batch of people entering, and as people won, you would take them out of the batch until everybody got picked for something. Then throw everybody back in, and then it's a free-for-all for whatever's left, so that everybody gets at least one thing instead of there being a whole bunch of people that are stuck with nothing or have a ton of stuff. And it's the way it goes. I mean, that seems to be the fairest way. But so there's that. They clear the rooms, which Comic-Con doesn't do in some of their panel stages, and you could get like each day that you could do another lottery. They had a daily lottery for those stages after that. I mean, it's kind of crazy how everything was like predicated on their app working, and which it didn't 100% of the time.
Hey, it's like Disneyland at Disney World.
Yeah. So the first daily lottery, their queue-it system worked fine. Then later that day, they introduced the Mando experience. They announced that. And so there was now 2 different things you could go for in the morning. And so the first day, they couldn't figure out how to run queue-it. So it went live for each one without a queue and randomization. There was no randomization. If you didn't get in at exactly 8:30 or at exactly 9, you were stuck with nothing. And then queue-it was back the next day, but only for one of the things. So it's like there was no rhyme or reason. The photo ops and guests thing with the photo ops and signatures, that section of the app to this day after the convention still says coming soon. But all of this complaining, and there were epic moments at this convention. We got to see, obviously we met Ewan McGregor, I do air quotes on that because it was for a few seconds. And I saw someone in the chat say that's how all photo ops are. And I'm like, no, that's how probably huge names are. But if you look at photo ops from other guests that were at Celebration, it looks like people had time to set up a shot or say something to the thing like, hey, here's this, like, here's this prop, can you use this? And there was none of that for Ewan McGregor. It was like, get them in and get them out. We got to see some awesome panels. I will say, organization, horrible. Content, best. I mean, it was awesome. The content of the convention was awesome. The merchandise, the people making the merchandise obviously know what they're doing because this being the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones, they made a few things with the Anakin quote about how much he hates sand. So they made a Zen garden with that quote on it. And they made a beach towel with that quote on it and flip-flops with that quote on it. So
that's super cute.
They know what they're doing. So the merch was really good. And they had a lot of it. But just like the overall organization on the floor and in the lines, I have a story about the line for the Mando panel on Saturday that's kind of crazy, and I don't know if we have time for it. But essentially, whatever they were announcing over the person in the area on the loudspeaker was not what happened. Like, they were basically saying, hey, we're only letting in 50 people. The line is closed. People kept joining the line. We're only letting in 50 people. Line is closed. Half hour, 45 minutes of that. Every 2 minutes, they said that. And then at the end, with about 500 people in line, everybody got in. So it's like, who knows?
Do we know what the, sorry to interrupt, do we know what the attendance was? It was certainly way more than WonderCon.
It was more, but it didn't feel like it was a ton more. Okay. People did different things that I'm used to at WonderCon, because some things that I felt like should have been really crowded were not. And so it was just weird. And people actually left panels, even though they could stay in the room. And I'm like, what are you people doing? Don't you just camp? So, yeah, I don't know. The live stage, this is something that we had a little bit of at Comic-Con over the years with some of the cable companies where they would broadcast from the floor or outside with Nerdist and some of the, and like other channels who did broadcasts from outside. They do a live show online for the Star Wars show, and they bring all the guests there. And that was a great way to see people like constantly coming through. Every 15 minutes or so, you would get like, that's where we saw, Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, 15 feet away. And you could do that all weekend long. If that's all you wanted to do was watch the Star Wars show and see everybody who was at those panels, basically from 15, 20, 30 feet away. And it's really good. But like, it was just like so many ups and downs. It's crazy. Is there any questions you guys have about it besides that?
How were the paper COVID bands or more plasticky? I don't know what they were.
So we got them on Wednesday night, and they were really bothersome initially. And then after that night, sleeping and then waking up, I almost didn't think about it most of the
used to
rest
it.
of the weekend.
Were
Get
they
used
the
to it.
actual plastic ones?
They were they were fabric.
Fabric.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
fabric.
they were fabric
Okay.
ones. The only plastic part on them was the little lock thing that they put on to hold it in. But no, they were fine. I didn't really think about them after that first night, essentially, with messing with it, feeling something weird on your wrist, and you're messing with it, trying to move it around, trying not to make it any tighter. Because as it gets tighter, it's not getting looser. So you got to make sure you don't make it tighter.
So do you think, I mean, I guess it's really hard to say, especially since this was your first celebration. Do you think that the line management problems and all the other management problems were like due to COVID and staffing issues, or do you think it was just, I don't know, they just weren't prepared?
It feels like they weren't prepared and didn't think it through. I mean, they shoved everybody except for panel winners for the big stage who actually were going to the big stage. Every other line went to one big meat locker of a room in Hall E at the bottom floor, and just got let in onto the show floor at 10 o'clock and go where you go and see what you can do. And that was it. And then people who had who wanted to go standby for the big panel room, you had to go all the way over to Hall E and then all the way back over to Hall A on the other side of, into Hall A to get in line for that, to try and get in. So if you were in like the 5th or 6th shoot, you didn't even get let in until like 10:20 or so. And there's no telling if they opened the front doors at 10 o'clock or not. They weren't supposed to until the lines were gone, but who knows if they did or not. We never tested that theory. But yeah, we feel like it was that they just didn't plan as much, and didn't feel like there was enough staff. I mean, at the back of all the shoots, because they probably had like 20 shoots of that fit at least 500 people in each shoot minimum. At the back of that, they maybe only had 2 or 3 people guarding to make sure people didn't cut in line. For all of those, for that whole length of the building, they only had that, at the back. So it was definitely demoralizing planning and trying to do the things that you need to do at a convention to make sure you get to things at the right time, and then having the convention actively work against you to do that. I mean, they even at one point started letting people in that had lined up in later shoots before us, because they had finished doing with the photo op. People are like, oh, there's another line next to it. Well, let's just let them in, without even considering that those people got there 5 minutes ago and we had gotten there an hour ago. It didn't even matter to them. They just let them in.
I mean, it's not good.
Yeah.
It's just not good. Well,
but I had a great time with the content. There was some awesome panels, and we got some great merch. The photo op itself was, it's all right. It's a photo op, we got it. We have a memory. We can look at that for the rest of our lives. We're like, look, there's Ewan McGregor standing right next to us. Yeah. We did the breakfast with Ashley Eckstein and Matt Lanter, and that was probably the best event of the weekend, because it was, in relative dollar terms of a convention experience, it was actually a great value.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
We have several people in the chat basically saying, so it's like D23 bad.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's just unorganized like D23.
It's just like D23, because same place and same issues, and people don't know what they're doing, and you can ask 3 different people the same question and get 3 different answers. I mean, if we didn't do some certain things at certain times, because like waiting in that line that they were telling us was closed and only the first 50 were getting in, and we were like the 500th person in line. If we didn't just stand there and wait for that extra half hour, we would not have gotten into the room for that panel. So just the things we did that we didn't listen to the convention center or the convention organizers allowed us to actually have a better convention.
Yeah. Rom asked to see some of the merch, if you have any of that handy.
Oh, geez, do I have it?
If you don't, you can always say, like, we'll take a photo later and tweet it.
You want to go grab some? Beth's gonna go grab some.
Okay.
It's out in the
Okay.
living room still.
Well, while she's doing that, I almost hate to ask this question because I feel like I already took us off on one tangent with carpet. Eric Heim asked, I've read that Star Wars Celebration did enforce their mask mandate, and now there are reports of COVID outbreaks from that convention. Will SDCC do a better job enforcing those rules? Did you what did you feel like the mask situation was like at Celebration?
At best, it was people were 50-50 with wearing masks. The convention made them mandatory and then did not enforce.
Yeah.
So it was basically up to the individual people. So the first day of the convention, we heard 0 staff telling people to put on a mask. The second day of the convention, we heard a few, and the third day we heard more. So as the convention went on, they got better at it. But it was all up to staff to actually enforce and give the give the appearance or the feel that the masks were actually required instead of, well, those 50 people over there aren't wearing them, so I'm not going to wear it. Yes. And those 3 people over there are, and so it's like, well, I guess I won't wear a mask because I don't feel like I need to wear a mask. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So it definitely is up to the convention organizers themselves to enforce that rule because people will not.
Yeah. And I mean, we're also curious to see how San Diego goes. I mean, nobody knows until we get there. I mean, I don't even think Comic-Con International can tell you this is how it's going to go until we get there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was pretty good at WonderCon. There was a lot of people who were, enforcing it and making sure people were wearing their masks as they walked into the building. Unfortunately, there was also staff working at the convention center who didn't wear masks. And so it was like this mixed message.
Yes, I agree with that. And you and I have had this conversation before with Sean as well. And it's funny to me because you and Sean both felt like way more people were unmasked at WonderCon than I felt like. And I'm like, well, I live in the South where literally nobody masks. So I'm like, if there's, 50% of people masked, that's like, whoa, amazing. But I didn't feel like it was that bad at WonderCon. But I mean, yeah, there were definitely people not wearing masks at WonderCon. So we'll just have to see what happens at San Diego. Yeah. All right. You got some merch to show us?
I do have some merch. So this is the Key Art t-shirt, which I loved the key art that they did for this show, and it was everywhere. And so we had to buy the shirt. I can only show a little bit at a time. So, but this was an amazing piece of art. So we had to buy that. We also bought a magnet with that and a puzzle. Of course, I bought a puzzle that had that. Here is another shirt I bought. It's the Bad Feelings Club, and it's a picture of all the people who say I've got a bad feeling about this in all the movies, including BB-8, which is awesome. They made a cooler out of the Camtono, which is the thing that the Beskar is in, and also the thing that Wilbur Hood is running with the ice cream machine in Empire Strikes Back. They had a Jedi training kit, which is just rocks, because that's how you train to be a Jedi, is to lift rocks with your mind.
That's awesome.
They're not heavy.
Hilarious.
They're soft rocks, so it's not like it's actual rocks, but
it should be actual rocks.
It should be. We spent so much money. We got to get one of the incentive pins, which is Jabba the Hutt. And here is, of course, there's Funkos. Here is the glitter Grogu.
Not a convention if you don't come home without a Funko.
Exactly. What else do we got? Oh, the aforementioned sand Zen garden.
Yes.
Which is, sand is very coarse and irritating.
Love it.
It's great. This was my favorite thing that they did.
That's fantastic.
Oh wait, there was also one more thing. It dropped. Sorry, it dropped. There was an Ahsoka plush. So of course we got an Ahsoka.
Makes sense. James in the chat asked, how long were you in line for the store?
We got super lucky. We did the queue it a thing for reservations, and we got in rather quickly, luckily. And we got the very first session of the very first day into the merch store. And
Nice.
that was one of the things where we didn't list to anyone, and we just walked down to, because I think, again, everyone else was supposed to go down to Hall E, which was the exact opposite side of the convention center from the store, which was in the north building where we usually have those panels, like Bob's Burgers was for WonderCon.
Yep.
And we walked to that building instead because it was like 15 minutes before open. And if we had gotten in line, we would have been sitting there for 45 minutes while they let all the other lines in. And then we would have been way at the back of the line for the merch store. So we just walked over there, went into a door that was open, walked up there, and we're like, hey, we have a reservation. And they're like, go ahead and get in line. And there was already like 30 people there. So obviously we weren't the only ones who didn't listen to what people said. And we got in and we got some of our stuff, and we wandered around for like an hour trying to figure out, like, what do we get? It's a very stressful experience because it was it was a panel room where it normally seats like 1,000 people. So it was a very big area, and all of the things were all spread out. And so you had to walk over here and get these few things, and then walk way over there and get those few things, and then go over there and get those few things. And they didn't have everything out initially either. So like some shirts, they only had like 1 or 2 sizes of. You're like, why don't you have everything out on the first day? What's going on? But things ran out immediately, and so we were lucky to get some of the things we got. But it was stressful but fun. We got it, like they were actually printing some exclusive shirts like on site that you could get certain designs for. So we got one of those.
Yeah, that's what I remember from 2015. They were screen printing the official shirts right there, and it was really neat to watch my shirt get made.
They had like a batch of like 8 of them that they would make every day, and then they had like an exclusive one each day that was different every day. So that was really cool. We didn't do anything with pins except for the incentive ones they give us for spending so much money, because that line was really long for those pins. But we got all the stuff we wanted. We got a bunch of shirts. We got even more shirts than what was there. Kenobi ones, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty awesome. And I see James Binder said that he had Jedi VIP for 2019. And yeah, that's the way to go with that show, man. Because those people get into the store and on the floor half an hour early, and they get a reserved spot in all the panel rooms. It's like, man, I wish I could have done that, because otherwise wouldn't have had to wait in all those lines all weekend long.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also very expensive.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
that was my celebration experience.
All right. So real quick, I want to go back to carpeting.
Okay, let's go back to carpeting.
So Camaro Kid asked, what's the reason for no carpet money? Okay, so the official reason is COVID. I don't really understand how COVID means there's no carpet, but that is the reason. But I would wager a guess that the real reason is money, but they're not going to say that.
Right.
That is my guess. But
Carpeting is very expensive.
Carpeting is expensive. And while we're on this topic, I saw somebody else ask, like, did they take out the carpeting like after, like during COVID? No. So the way that this works is basically it's up to each individual convention that goes to the San Diego Convention Center to decide whether or not they want carpeting in that exhibit hall. And in fact, even in a normal year, like after San Diego Comic-Con, like they roll it all up and away it goes. So there is, again, it's just up to the individual convention whether or not they want to pay for carpeting in there. So this year, again, we have heard no carpeting on the aisles.
We will be able to, probably like with special edition, we'll be able to jump from Oasis to Oasis as the booths will probably have carpeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every time.
And even like plushy carpeting.
Yes. That's my understanding, is I think the booths themselves will have, it's just not the aisles and the quote unquote common areas.
At every time we walked into a booth at Celebration that had carpeting, I turned to Beth and I'm like, look, carpeting.
Amazing. Yeah.
Like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
So it was very nice when.
It was the worst for the stage though.
Yeah, the stage had no carpeting. So if you were wanting to watch the people for a few hours there was no luck. So
the standing room.
The standing room at the live stage. Yeah, we stood there on the first day in 2 different times for a total of like 4 or 5 hours. And I basically was hopping from foot to foot for like the last 2 hours just because I was trying to keep my feet from falling off, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that is enough about carpeting. Okay. Shall we get into the actual Comic-Con news?
Sure. Why not?
Why not? Okay, we have not labeled any of these for who's going to talk about what, so that's fun. I will go first.
I will go second.
Okay. We have been continuing to update our list of artist commissions. We added Steve Bryant today. We added a couple folks over the weekend. And then I did just want to mention that James Silvani's list opens if you're watching live tomorrow. If you are not watching live, it opened on Wednesday, June 1st. So if you want on his list, make sure you email.
And we got news from the man himself that Kevin Smith will have another Hall H panel this year. And he's likely going to be showing stuff from Clerks 3. So he tweeted that out a couple of days ago. And so we're expecting the annual Kevin Smith panel.
Yes,
at Comic-Con.
I think that is 0% surprise. But hey, it's good news.
And we have started a little thank you letter writing campaign to Comic-Con International. I think this is from, it was just last week's podcast, right?
Yeah.
And it was just kind of a really bittersweet story that Gary told of seeing people so excited. It's kind of like he wasn't used to seeing what we are used to seeing, how excited people get for Comic-Con. So thought it'd be a good, nice idea to thank them either now or maybe after the con. And we have the PO box on our site.
Yes.
And for offsites, we are going to have a ghosts offsite. And we don't know too much about it. But
We know that it will be a Pinecone Trooper themed friend zone.
okay. Is that like a special kind of stormtrooper from Endor?
Pinecone Trooper. Yes.
Pinecone Trooper?
Yes. Yes.
One of the characters, he was like the scout leader for the Pinecone Troopers. I haven't seen the US version, but I've seen the UK. But that is, yeah, we don't know where it'll be. I'm sure it'll be outside, but it'll be fun. And I would guess that we would get a panel as well, since they're going to the trouble of bringing it offsite.
There you go.
And I wanted to add in that the Comic-Con Museum is now closed for all the rest of what will be this month tomorrow, all through June. And they're going to have a, grand opening celebration on June 30th. And this is so they can add in the new Spider-Man exhibit that's coming.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so we teased a little bit about an announcement that we will be making this week. Look for that announcement to come on Thursday. Some of you have very high expectations and you should probably lower them, but some of you correctly deduced what it is about, and we'll have that news on Thursday.
And now it is time for exclusives. And I'm going to handle these first couple because they, of course,
Star Wars.
Star Wars. So the first one is from Beeline Creative, the makers of awesome Tiki products. And they will be bringing the Dewback Punch Bowl set and the TIE Fighter mug to Comic-Con this year. They will be $85 each. And you probably will be able to pick them up. I think it says you'll be able to pick them up on site instead of doing any kind of pre-ordering. So that's pretty
Yes.
cool. You can walk away with them.
Yes, that's what it said.
In addition to that, at the booth for Pop Minded by Hallmark, they put into one on their display in one of the last days. They revealed the Gonk Droid and Mouse Droid set that will sell for $35. It will be available at Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con, and you can check it out when I'm sure they'll do some announcements about that officially very soon or soon-ish.
Yeah.
Oh, we love Gonk. Yesterday's, I don't know if there's a slide for this. Yesterday's added, yay, t-shirt and bag with the convention center for starting their exclusive run.
Yes, yes. And what I love about them is you can pre-order for in-booth pickup. Absolutely. Factory Entertainment showed off some of their exclusives, including this one that I love, which is, yes, it's a jumbo Bruce the Shark. He is, I think, 19 inches. 26 inches. I'm wrong. 26 inches. So he's giant. But he comes with accessories that you can like put in his belly like he's eating it, including a half-eaten Hall H sign. I think this is really cute. So he is $45. You can order him online for shipping. You can buy it at the show, or you can also enter to win one on our site. And then they also had some other exclusives, including a Jurassic Park dinner plate like they had in the film. That one is $50. There's also an Aquaman Trident cocktail fork set for $30, or a Wonder Woman gold Godkiller sword scale prop replica for $35.
And we also had some other exclusive news from Symbiote with a Catnip Bravo. What do we have?
Transformer. He's
Transformer.
Optimus Prime. Yeah, he's Optimus
That's
Prime.
really cool. And NECA revealed details about how you can get their exclusives. So you can check out the site for all of that information on where you can get them and when.
I think their pre-order is this Friday. They have not said what time, and they have not really announced anything besides that, but it will be this Friday. So
their stuff usually goes up in like at 10 o'clock in the morning Pacific,
Yes.
right around that time, 9 or 10.
I think that's probably it, but they have not officially said 10 a.m.
So it'll be ready
And
in the
then-
morning.
Yes. And then Patrick also has a couple of things that he showed off. A moonlighting print this morning. That's a mashup of Moon Knight and Sailor Moon. That's really cute. And then last week was a How Do You Like Your Boba, which is Boba Fett. Has different flavors of boba, which is cute. And then, yeah, I think that's it for Patrick.
And don't forget that if and when there are any contests and you don't have a ticket, we will put them on our contest hub on the site.
Yes. And then I also wanted to mention our attendee of the week. Anyone can sign up for that. We've been announcing them every Friday. We would love to feature you on our site. So please sign up. And then I also want to mention that we have our Patreon, where we do a monthly Patreon exclusive podcast. And when we announce that thing on Thursday, I think odds are incredibly high that our patrons will get first dibs at the thing. So.
So we're going to be back next week with news, exclusives, and a special guest, Carrie.
Yes, it will be Dov Kellemer of DKE. And I think this one's going to be fun. DKE are the bootleg action figures that are wild and crazy. Some of them are amazing. And we're excited to talk about what goes into making those.
All right. And you can sign up for our newsletter, which includes a crossword search puzzle every week. That's pretty awesome. That is also on the site.
Those are cool.
Yeah.
And so is that it? I think
Yeah, there's a couple questions in the chat I want to get
Let's
to.
get the questions.
Yeah, so Shannon asked, do you get the entire museum with the Spider-Man tickets? I don't know that we ever got like a clear answer on that, Kim. Do you know?
I did ask that if you are a museum member, you will be able to have access to the Spider-Man exhibit and receive a guest pass. It is a separate ticket otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. JG asked, which rumored offsites are you most excited for? I don't know that there are like rumored offsites right now. I think Lord of the Rings is the only one that's really like quote unquote rumored at the moment. I mean, if that happens, I'm excited for that. Again, I would love Apple TV, anything, literally anything. What about you guys? What are you hoping comes and does an offsite, like in your dream world?
I'm hoping that the Lord of the Rings also shows up because Amazon goes all out when they do an offsite, and so I think it would be amazing.
I would like a Lord of the Rings forest as well.
Okay, all right.
Not Mordor, just a Rivendell sort of situation. So, but I'll take it.
All right. So it sounds like Lord of the Rings is very high up on the list.
And I don't know anything, but I know Orville is still on the air, and it was amazing last year. And I know they've switched things and gone to Hulu and Disney essentially. And so I'm still hoping it'll still be on the air.
Yeah, I hope, as Steve mentioned, I hope that we get some new stuff and we see some different things and people trying some stuff and maybe some new offsites that we can go and enjoy and find something new or experience something different. So rumored new stuff. Hopefully.
Yes, I am here for new stuff. I love when new stuff comes. It's my favorite. But let the new stuff include Apple TV. Hey,
Sense of theme.
they've got the
People are
best
mentioning-
stuff.
Shannon mentioned For All Mankind, and that would be
Solitary
amazing
focus.
as well.
For
Apple-
All Mankind is amazing. Severance is amazing.
That'd be creepy. I hope it's not creepy though.
Ted Lasso. I mean, come on. They've got the best stuff these days. So that is my vote.
Yeah. I think Apple TV showing up is this year's Bring the Mr. Robot Ferris wheel.
Yes. Give me Apple TV, please. And don't let it just be Prehistoric Planet. Like that'd be cool, but I want a scripted show. Please.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us and indulging me in my rant about Star Wars Celebration. Kim, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
Yes, thank you. I am outside Comic-Con on the web and Twitter and Facebook, and I have a TikTok, and we'll see how that goes. Carrie, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Carrie Dixon, but I'm basically not logged in there until after Comic-Con. So, James, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I am Dan Riegel everywhere online. You can check out geekshotphoto.com for social media links for Beth and myself. And thank you to Beth, who produces the show, edits it, creates all the slides and all the other things that get this podcast into your ears.
We are on iTunes. If you'd like to subscribe, the links are up in the blog, or you can search for SDConCast. If you like what you've heard so far, please review us. We're also on Stitcher Radio, and the link is in the show notes.
If you want to get a hold of us, you can send us an email at sdcomiccon.blog@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/sdconblog, or tweet us at sd_comic_con. Thank you all for listening, and everybody go
shawarma.
Carpets need feet.
Apple TV.
Shouldn't it be 2 feet carpet?
Yeah, but that's the fun